Hey guys, welcome back. Welcome back to the Better Not Bitter podcast. I am your host, Mayia, and today I am going to be talking about 10 misconceptions that have been roaming around for quite some time regarding chronic health conditions. Before we get into it, I'm going to drop the intro. All right, guys, thank you for spending this time with me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And without further ado, let's get into it. Before I talk about some of the major misconceptions regarding chronic illness, I want to talk about what chronic illness is. There seems to be a discrepancy or confusion regarding what exactly is meant by the word chronic illness. These are conditions, be it genetic, be it physiological, that pretty much last longer than 6 months to a year, thus making them chronic. You know, the difference between something that's chronic and acute is the time. And so with the majority of chronic illnesses, you know, some are lifelong, some are decades long. Everybody's different. Everybody's experiences are different. But being able to kind of debunk and try to work through where these myths come from in the first place, I think will help us understand where people with chronic illnesses are coming from. It will help their loved ones understand where we are coming from. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and pull up this article. And I will attach this in the description of this video. So give me one moment. All right. So as you can see, here is the first myth right out the gate. I've heard this one personally so many times, it does not make sense. And it is that the way a person, you know, looks reflects how she or he is feeling physically. This is definitely a huge myth for more than one reason. Main reason being that pain is not always visible. And I don't know if you've ever heard the term suffering in silence, but a lot of people who live with chronic illnesses and chronic health conditions and even chronic pain, we tend to suffer in silence for the simple fact of misconceptions like these. Just because I'm sitting here and I'm communicating with you does not mean that I'm in pain. And I think we establish this type of perspective with things regarding mental health as well. Just because someone's smiling, giggling, having a good time, you know, they're obviously feeling good, right? But you can laugh to keep from crying, and you can push through certain elements of physical or chronic illness in order to do what needs to be done in your daily life. And then there are some of us who, you know, end up bedbound or homebound because we're not able to push through that as a result of pushing through so much. So this is definitely a myth. And I think this type of thing comes from people not understanding that pain and illness is multifaceted. It's not a blanket experience for anybody. It doesn't come in the same shape, size, and form for everybody, even if two people share the same condition. So wrapping your head around that for someone who has not experienced chronic illness or chronic pain can be difficult. And I think one of the solutions to changing the way we view this is simply, you know, allowing yourself to let those myths, those assumptions fall to the wayside and spend time with that person in your life who has a chronic illness. There's something about the power of anecdotal data, meaning spending time and talking to people, hearing their experiences. And if you talk to multiple people, you will soon find out that everybody's different. But one thing is common is that we're all fighting and we're all warriors on a daily basis. So that is definitely a myth that's got to go. All right. So the second myth is pretty similar to some degree. If people's mental state, emotional stress, or for example, makes them feel worse physically, then chronic illness cannot possibly physically based. This is highly, it's just errant, and it's incorrect, it's inconsiderate, it's a lot of things, and most of all, it's lazy. And here's why. You have chronic illnesses that are solely originated from genetics. You cannot change your genetics, the things that you got from your parents and your family line. So to say something like, oh, yeah, it's all in your head, so it can't possibly be something physically based. Some chronic illnesses are exacerbated by postural changes, which stem from the chronic illness itself. So it's a cycle of one thing affecting the other. Then you have people who develop chronic illnesses as a result of service in different types of communities, different types of areas. So to say that it is something like that's all in your head, that's very inconsiderate. And I think this myth comes from this no pain, no gain mentality we have in American society and sometimes internationally, where we think that, it's all in your head until, you have proof, or the idea that we would attribute someone's pain to being in their head is our way of dismissing it so that we don't have to confront the truth of what someone is dealing with, because that means we have to share in their suffering, share in their experience, take time out of our busy day to minister to them or to love on them or to serve them. And that just speaks to our culture as a whole. Like, we've become so dismissive out of, convenience, when sharing in a moment with somebody who's going through something, hearing their experiences requires us to be inconvenienced sometimes. But it's not really all about us, especially if you are a Christian. Like, we're called to, be the hands and feet of Jesus, which means we sit down and we rest with those with people who are suffering. If someone's crying, cry with them. If someone's having a great day, like, share in those moments. But I think it is solely dismissive and lazy to just attribute it to, oh, it's all in your head. All right. All right. So we're going to go to the third myth. And this one hits home a little more for me just because this is something that I have to kind of work through on my lonesome. And that is preparing for an event by engaging in radical rest will assure that when the occasion arrives, the chronically ill will feel better than if they had not rested. Man, let me tell you, it could be only like the work of someone who has not experienced chronic illness to say something like this. And I say that because for everyone that I've talked to, for every story that I've heard, for every article I've read from people who have a chronic illness, the same thing rings true, and that is, no matter how much rest you get, sometimes it's just not enough, because there's something called chronic fatigue. And for those of you who don't know, with chronic illness, there's something called comorbidities. So, for example, someone like me may have chronic migraine disorder. But a comorbidity is another condition that closely relates to that and also affects that primary condition. So for me, chronic fatigue affects the migraines just as much as hypermobility disorder, which I also have, affects migraines, as well as photophobia affects migraines. So understand that a lot of times when you're talking to somebody, or you know a loved one, and you're caring for them or doing life with them, a lot of times they're going through multiple layers. Like I said in the beginning, it's multifaceted. It's not a cut and dry process or experience for anybody. So when it comes to something like rest, it's really kind of difficult to navigate, because I know in my experience, I can rest for a week in preparation for something, but I just never know. I rest with the intention of like, okay, taking care of myself, doing what I can, so that, you know, at the very least, I did what I could leading up to that event. But you never know. You kind of have to plan, and then plan again, and then have a contingency plan for the plans you just made. And one of the things that I find very difficult is having to cancel on people a lot because of flare ups. With chronic migraine um, disorder, I have migraine 24/7. That means it does not go away, it is present. The difference, though, between one moment and the next is the intensity of the migraine and the type of migraine I'm experiencing at any given moment. So, right now, as I'm talking to you guys, I have what is called, or what I like to call, a functional migraine, which means I can communicate, I can sort of move about, but it comes with some vestibular symptoms like vertigo, uh, lightheadedness, nausea, ringing in the ears, but I'm able to function to a certain degree of my level of normalcy. And so, by that definition alone, uh, I could end up 30 minutes from now, God forbid, 30 minutes from now experiencing a different type of migraine, maybe like a hemiplegic migraine, where half of my body is paralyzed and weakened to the point where I cannot move that side of my body, in addition to all the typical symptoms of migraine and atypical symptoms. So you really never know. And a solution that I believe is effective for debunking or just ridding yourself of this myth in general is, we have to be in a place of humility, where if you are doing life with someone who has a chronic illness or a disability or chronic pain, be willing to be teachable. Be willing to be teachable, because just like it feels like they're canceling on you yet again, imagine how they feel having pain or a certain set of symptoms yet again. It's very easy to be on the outside looking in like, oh, there they go, blaming it on whatever condition. But it's a lot harder to be on the other end of that, having a chronic illness, and give yourself grace, because you feel what people aren't saying, and you feel what people are saying, and you realize that very few really understand the gravity of what it means to live with a chronic illness. So I know that was a bit of a rant, but y'all just bear with me. All right, number 4. If chronically ill people are enjoying themselves, they must feel okay. This is another wild myth, and I say this because if someone without, a chronic illness goes through a situation or a circumstance in their life that's really difficult, what is a key trait of human nature? We either try to escape from that situation emotionally or mentally, through comedy, through levity, through faith, through community, trying to find ways to lighten the load of whatever situation you're going through. why would we not give that same grace to someone who is chronically ill? It just makes no sense. One of the things I find as someone who has multiple chronic illnesses is watching comedy like that makes my day. Being able to watch Kev on stage and um Preacher Lawson, people like that make my day while I'm laying in bed. I can't physically move or anything like that. And so it helps me deal with what I'm dealing with, because I would much rather laugh and use laughter as a medicine than sit there and have a pity party because of all the things that I can think of that I'm not able to do. So, it's really one of those things where chronic illness has been so stigmatized, that we stigmatize the people that have these circumstances. And it's in a lot of ways sad and unfair, and I get that. If you don't have any experience with something like this, I get how you can be skeptical. I get how you can be like, hey, there she go again with another migraine. Like, surely she's trying to get out of going to work or doing XYZ activity. But that is not the case. There's a whole nother side of just the human experience that for many of us involves pain. So we have to get to a place, here's the solution: get to a place where we understand that someone with a chronic illness is human too. And so those same basic needs that all human beings need still apply. We still need therapy. We still need moments of levity and suffering. We still need to laugh. We still need to cry. So being able to view it from that perspective at minimum, just like, okay, they have another migraine again. They're suffering or they're going through this circumstance. Instead of attributing it to, oh, they must feel good because they showed up to work today. Fam, something simple that you can say is, hey, man, it must have taken a lot of strength for you to come to work today. I appreciate you being here. Something as simple as that. And it might rock their world because you don't get that from very many people. So yeah, that is, another common myth that you hear even in chronic diseases, not just chronic illnesses. Um, all right. Number 5, we are cooking today. Stress reduction techniques such as mindfulness, meditation are a cure for chronic pain and illness. Now, let me say this. I am a big proponent of alternative treatments like supplements and exercise and doing the work on yourself in every aspect of wellness to kind of help manage chronic illness. But there is no one size fits all cure. Like, and that's something I wish people understand. Just because you recommend something that was effective for one individual doesn't mean it's going to apply to the next. And so it becomes very annoying uh, because, again, I know plenty of people who meditation and mindfulness has helped tremendously. I know people who it hasn't helped at all. I know some people who've been in the middle. So because this is one of those very personal, individualistic type of things, you cannot attribute one medium of care to being a cure. Oh, I got a comment. Let's see. Got to show that you can do anything you put your mind to. Yeah, and people with chronic illnesses are known as warriors because many of us are fighting battles that are unseen, they are invisible. And so, by the grace of God, we are able to do what we are called to do. And a lot of times, our plans change trajectory. for me, I had planned on getting my PhD in physical therapy. Now I'm doing full-time advocacy, but that is the grace of God that he led me in another direction. And it's not just anything that I could put my mind to, but it's anything that God puts in my hands and in my heart to serve and live in the grace of. So thank you for your comment, Shay Brew. I hope I said that right. All right. Number 6. Being at home all day is a dream lifestyle. Okay. I'm going to paint a picture of 2 scenarios, okay? Scenario 1. Person without chronic illness. Let's say they need to take a mental health day, and they go home and they are physically resting in bed, chilling, watching Netflix, having a great time, just taking care of their mental health, all those wonderful things. Scenario number 2. Person with a chronic illness, at home, laying in bed, experiencing all the symptoms that are attributed to their conditions, and Netflix may or not be in the cards due to their condition. But the whole time they're laying down, they are experiencing not just those symptoms attributed to their condition, but the guilt that comes along with not being able to do what they need to do as a result of those symptoms. The difference between scenario 1 and scenario 2 is an illness is present with associated symptoms causing pain, and in addition to that, guilt and shame as a result of not being able to do activities of daily living, go to work, or whatever it is that individual does. I think if you understand it from that perspective, you'll see that most people with a chronic illness are not in bed because they want to be. like most people with a disability who have a physical disability are not in bed because they want to be. And you cannot base your experience, or you cannot project your experience of what you would do when you're home onto somebody who has a different set of circumstances. That's just, it's illegitimate, it's irresponsible, and it's lazy. And a major solution to this is understanding the individual you're in relationship with, you're doing life with, just being able to ask them questions like, hey, when you're at home, what is that like for you? What are you experiencing? And I get that most people are going to hear me say that and they're going to be like, ain't nobody got time for that. But that very attitude is the reason why these myths exist, because ain't nobody's being held accountable in terms of relationship. I think things have gotten way too flippant, way too insincere, and lazy, like point blank period. And so the best way to understand what somebody's going through, or have an inkling of a perspective into what they're living with, is to talk to them. And guess what? Listen. That means close your mouth, shut your brain off, or the part of your brain that wants to object and throw in home remedies and facts and what your cousin experienced and why that should work for this individual. Like, shut all that off, listen, and sit with that person. I promise you, it works. It really does. All right, so that was 6. I have my own. Shout out to Psychology Today for that really cool article. I always like to find, just different perspectives on things I'm going to talk about. And so we're going to talk about a major, major, major myth. And that's this: Tylenol or any other NSAIDs will fix or cure your pain. Okay. For the record, anti-inflammatories and pain medications like Tylenol, Excedrin, Aleve, Advil, and there's a long list of them. Those types of medications are not medications that anybody desires to be on for long periods of time. Studies have proven that they, over time, lead to liver damage and a whole host of medical complications. So while you're popping Tylenol to try to relieve a set of symptoms repeatedly over a long length of time, you're creating other issues, which is also another issue with prescription medications. A lot of them cause other issues, uh, which you would hope that wasn't the case. But when you're trying to treat one thing, you end up creating another problem. So to say that just take Tylenol or NSAID and it'll fix it or cure it, you really have no inkling of the pain processing and the pain threshold that a person living with chronic illness has. It is something that very few people experience, but for those who do, you get it. Uh, a level 10 of pain for someone without a chronic illness is nothing compared to chronic pain. And I'm not diminishing anyone's experience by any means. Pain is pain. You know, get help, do what you need to do. But I'm saying that this is a unique experience, that you cannot just put a blanket hey, do this, a blanket suggestion or remedy out there for someone, especially if you don't know that they've been seeing 5 different medical professionals, they've tried 20 different medications, they a pharmacy at home of prescription medications, and you tell them to take Tylenol, which doesn't even phase the pain they're going through. So I encourage people, a solution to this is, please stop trying to play a medical professional. We have medical professionals for a reason. Don't do that. Instead of trying to be a medical professional or an expert, be a friend. And I know that seems very like, oh, kumbaya, but like really, just be a friend. That's what most people need. We don't need any more medical professionals. I like to feel normal using regular school supplies than black line paper and bold pencil that I used to get in elementary school. I do have a seeing disability, but I don't want to really use them. I hear that. And similar to a chronic illness where we have to accommodate ourselves, with disability, we have to accommodate ourselves. I'm visually impaired, and it sounds like my friend in the comment section has a vision impairment. And sometimes you don't want to use certain methods of accommodation because they bring unwanted attention. Sometimes they're just not as effective for you. And the same applies to chronic illness. Not every solution of accommodation is effective. Not every solution of treatment is effective for every individual. So when you recommend things without knowing their medical history, what doctors they've been through, the treatments they've tried, you're implying that we're not doing enough. You're saying basically, oh man, I see you're in pain, and it's making me uncomfortable. So in order to make myself comfortable, let me recommend something to you without knowing the Kool-Aid, the flavor of the Kool-Aid. That's exactly what's happening. So I would encourage anybody, like if you are struggling with connecting with someone who's living with a chronic illness, don't just walk away from them, reject them, or attribute it to them, faking it. Like actually invest time into listening, asking the right questions. Like, hey, when you say that Tylenol doesn't work for you, what does that mean? When you say this doesn't work for you, but this does, what does that mean for you? And be willing to sit with that answer, not try to pick it apart because you don't know the details of their experience and what they're going through. Point blank, period. All right. Next myth, I believe that was number 7. Wrong one. So I chose this one specifically because like, if you can see it on my face, you already know. As a Christian, I am a believer in Christ, a follower of Christ, and I believe in the power of prayer. But this right here is not okay. That's never okay. You should never say that to anybody going through any type of experience with disability or chronic illness. And here's why. I'll give you 2 scenarios of why this is not okay. If they are a Christian or a believer in the faith, chances are their faith is already being tested by chronic illness in and of itself. And if they are, in fact, a believer, they are already praying to God more than you can already imagine. How do I know this? Because you can't get through a flare-up. You can't get through isolation. You can't get through loneliness. You can't get through the pain that comes with chronic illness without crying out to somebody who understands. And if you know anything about Christianity, we know that God is the only one who ultimately understands everything that we go through. So for you to say pray hard enough, fam, you don't know my prayer life. You don't know what I'm going through. You won't sit with me to figure out what's going on. And then you're going to tell me to pray harder. That is not okay. That is not Christ-like. You know, in the New Testament, we see Jesus's ministry take off at the age of 30. And literally one of the first miracles that took place was him turning water into wine. He was in proximity with people at a wedding, and he listened to his mom's request, and he turned water into wine. And then later on, we see he is traveling to a city, sees a man sitting in a tree, Zacchaeus, a tax collector, knew every bit of wrong, every person he cheated, everything that he had ever done, and he still wanted to go to this man's house. He was in proximity and in fellowship with people that most religious folks in that day would have rejected. Fast forward, Jesus heals a man by the name of Bartimaeus. It should be noted that Jesus didn't heal everybody he came in contact with, because he was in multitudes of people. Multitudes of people were grabbing at him for a chance to be healed, behold, and all those things. But he chose blind Bartimaeus, as they call it in the word. And he healed him. But when he healed him, he didn't just heal him, he made him whole. He forgave him of his sins. He gave him a new perspective on life. He didn't just meet his physical need, he met his spiritual need. You see, my issue with something like Pray Harder is a lot of people who say this are saying it from the perspective of being outside of someone's situation. Yeah, I'm coming for your toes. I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. But a lot of people are saying it from the perspective of being outside of someone's situation, on the outside looking in. But you have not taken one step into somebody's house, into somebody's heart, into somebody's situation, but you want to diagnose their prayer life. You want to diagnose their faith. Do you know one of the main reasons that people leave the church because of when they have a chronic illness is because of the lack of community, the isolation that occurs, the stigmatization that occurs from people in the faith who project and diagnose someone's faith from the outside looking in. May I submit to you today that before you tell someone to pray harder, how about you serve them harder? How about you sit with them and listen to them harder? How about you meet their most external needs? How about you fellowship with them? If they can't go to church, you meet them at their house. You have Bible study, or you build a relationship with them. But do not, from the outside looking in, project or diagnose someone's faith. Okay? Okay? The last thing you want to be is a stumbling block or a hindrance to someone. Now I'm going to talk about people who are not in the faith. What sense does it make to tell somebody who don't know Jesus to pray harder when they don't have a relationship? So if they don't have a relationship, praying wouldn't really make sense, because that would mean communication with God, and they've never communicated with God. What relevance is that going to be to them? It is better for you to build a relationship with them, show the love of Christ in your actions as in your words, than to say pray harder when they don't know the meaning of prayer in the first place. We have to be models of the change that we want to see. We have to be willing to lay down our conveniences and comfortability to minister to the hearts of people who are lost and people who are suffering. We have to be willing to do that, because if we keep standing in this place of looking from the outside and projecting inward, we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to get anywhere. Listen to me. I implore you. If you have said this to somebody, please stop. If anything, the phrase should not be, you need to pray harder. It should be, you know what? How can I pray for you? And we'll pray together. Or what needs do you need met? Because I want to help them be met. How can I serve you better? How can I love you better? You know what? Let's schedule a time to meet so I can help you clean the house, or, watch your kids for you, or we can pray together, have a Bible study, or worship together. We can talk, commune. Because if we really want to say that we're followers of Christ, He is the ultimate model in terms of how we conduct ourselves. And if He modeled communing with people, lost, saved, religious, whatever, if He modeled communing with people and meeting their needs, which ultimately ministers to their very soul, why are we not doing that? It is lazy to project. It is lazy to diagnose someone else's faith when we should be diagnosing ourselves, saying, okay, I see them suffering and it bothers me. Why am I uncomfortable? Assess that. Why is my suffering making you uncomfortable? So uncomfortable that you want to take the easy way out and just tell me to pray harder. You tell me that. Yes. You have to show that you cared. You really do. One of my favorite quotes, I don't know who it's by, but it says, people don't care what you know. And I always, insert who you know as well, until they know that you care. Like, really, like if you really want to create change, you have to know that people care. One of my favorite scenes from the movie Black Panther, or one of the favorite themes of the movie, is how, even though Killmonger, the villain, was bad and evil, it came from a place of abandonment and the things that he saw in his community that needed to be changed. And he felt like, the regime of Wakanda failed in meeting those needs. One of the things that I noticed was that at the end, when T'Challa goes back to where Killmonger lived in his community, and he establishes I think a youth center, and he intends to kind of make plans to kind of build up the economy in that area. It spoke to me because had Killmonger have known that his family and the regime of Wakanda known that they cared about folks across the ocean in America as much as they did in Wakanda, maybe he wouldn't have been Killmonger. We don't know. We have to understand that talk is cheap. And in a lot of instances, talking is the way that you get your foot in the door, but action is the way that you get your entirety of your message to a group of people. That's how you create change. And my conviction is this, even as a person who lives with chronic illness, I'd rather check myself, my inactions, and my motive before I check somebody else. Because guess what? If I have an issue with somebody, that's my issue. If someone makes me uncomfortable, that's my uncomfortability that I have to sit with. And if I see somebody who's going through a loss or physical suffering or invisible suffering, and if I'm inclined to feel uncomfortable, guess what? Uncomfortability is not something we need to run from. It is something we need to lean into. We don't like silence, but we really need to lean into silence, because that's when we hear from God, and that's when we can listen to others better. So J&W Boss says, why not use that movement to pray for someone else? Exactly. If you see someone struggling, why take that moment to tell someone to pray harder when you don't know they pray behind closed doors? Exactly. As I was saying. And another thing, one of the most effective ways to pray for someone, I'm going to give y'all a hack. One of the most effective ways to pray for someone. It doesn't got to be like, thou God, I beseech thee of the most holiest requests. You don't got to be like that. Is build a relationship with someone. Because once you have a relationship with someone, you know how to pray. And here's the thing. If you're praying for somebody, you don't have to tell them you're praying for them. Yes, I said it. You don't have to tell them, hey, yo, I'm praying for you. You don't have to say that all the time. Sometimes, most of the time, most of the prayer you do for someone, they're not going to know about it explicitly, but they may feel the ramifications of you praying for them because of how God moves in their life. But you don't have to announce that you're praying for somebody, like the Sadducees and Pharisees in the Bible, who would announce, hey, I'm going to go pay tithes. Look how much I'm giving to the Lord, dropping bags of money in the offering plate. You don't have to do that. You really don't, because God hears your prayers, and he knows the intention of your heart, and he knows what that person needs. A faithful friend is someone who's willing to intercede, someone who's willing to serve, and someone who is willing to love their friend and not get a red carpet for doing that. All right, so I've talked like a while on that. So that was number 8, I believe. All right. Here is another one. People with chronic illness, or people who live with chronic illness, are lazy. That is a bold-faced untruth. And I say that for this reason. There are so many warriors that I know who have started foundations, organizations. They serve more in their communities than any able-bodied individual I've ever seen. They're more generous than any able-bodied individual I've ever seen. Some of these people are CEOs, entrepreneurs. They work in hospitals. And for those who are not able to work a typical job, they are building relationships. They are raising kids to the best of their ability. They are leveraging what God has given them to the best of their ability. Some of them have left positions that really took a toll on their symptoms and then ended up starting something new as a result of that. So to say that people with chronic illness who have a chronic illness are lazy, you just don't know anybody with chronic illness. And if you know someone with chronic illness and it appears that, oh, all they do is lay around and talk about how much pain they're in, if you really understood how much work it takes just to sit up with the chronic illness, and some more than others, some are a bit more severe than others. If you really understood that, you'd be like, wow, I'm just gonna shut my mouth because clearly you got it. You know what? You a champ. You're a real one. So we really have to do better. Like, and I'll tell you where this comes from. I did a podcast episode with Pastor Roy Dockery. Check out his YouTube channel. He's awesome mentor, awesome friend of the podcast. And he has several chronic illnesses as well as autoimmune diseases as a result of serving in the Navy. And we had a conversation about productivity and busyness and where it all comes from in relation to people with disabilities and chronic illnesses. In America, especially, we have an unhealthy obsession of looking busy and praising exhaustion. So much so that when someone who has a chronic illness manages what they can manage with the spoons and the marbles that they have, we deem it as lazy. When that's not just lazy, that is just stewarding the energy that we have. You know, someone without a chronic illness may have 10 spoons. Spoons represent energies. 10 spoons to do all the normal daily tasks, go to work. Whereas someone with chronic illness, they may start out with 4 spoons to do all of that. Now you tell me who's working harder, the one with 10 spoons or the one with 4 spoons? Not to say one is a better person than the other, but I'm just saying it requires more strength, more time, more energy. So to say that someone is lazy, you just don't understand what it really means to be productive, and you don't understand that everybody's experience and level of consistency and productivity is going to be different. I'm just surprised someone had that on there. Never knew someone with chronic illness. Yeah, it's quite prevalent. And studies show that the prevalence of individuals with chronic illnesses is increasing. So it's going to become more pertinent and more urgent for us to understand and really learn what chronic illness is, the people behind it, and how to serve them better, and how to create ways where they can fit in society and contribute to the best of their ability. Hey, Tyler. All right. So one more question. No. 2 more questions. I'm on number 9, I believe. Just think positive. Wow. So this kind of goes back to the other question regarding mindfulness and meditation and all those things. If you're a Christian, you know the Bible says, as a man thinks, so is he. Meaning that what you think in turns comes into fruition in the ways that you act and the way that you live. And positive thinking is important. But what this does is it robs an individual with a chronic illness of the opportunity to unpack the psychological ups and downs and the emotional ups and downs that come with chronic illness. Because, oh baby, they come. and they hit hard. But if you do not allow yourself to unpack them and understand, okay, the reason why I'm feeling guilt right now, because I'm laying in bed in so much pain and I can't do XYZ, I feel guilt because I equate my worth with how much I'm able to do. Or being able to unpack, oh man, the ignorant comment this person just made hurt me because deep down I still haven't come to terms with the impact this illness has had on my life. You rob people of having those epiphanies, those revelations, those moments of strength, those moments of increasing in understanding when you say just think positive. And I get it. This comes from society, who still we still don't fully grasp or support mental health in an appropriate way, because we still have that no pain no gain, the stigma around therapy, the stigma around crying and having emotional intelligence. Because there is a stigma on that, we just tell people to think positive or just pray it away. Faith without works is dead. That means, yes, pray, have faith, but we are called to take actions as we stand in faith. We're called to act and unpack the things that are hindering us from being who God has called us to be and from being healthy. Um, I'll give you an example. So I am notorious for holding things in, holding things in, holding things in till boom, I explode. So in therapy, I had to realize with my therapy, we talked about this, and she was like, you do that because you don't want to inconvenience anybody. And I was like, what you mean? I'm like, and she was like, you don't want to inconvenience anybody by communicating how you feel in the moment. So you bottle it up until you explode. I had to learn, and I'm still learning, that communication and being upfront is worth it, especially in the moment, rather than dealing with the repercussions of me blowing up and saying things or acting in a way that is contrary to the person that I am. Same goes with chronic illness, because chronic illness, it really exposes personality traits, even disability. It will expose some things that you got to work on, like, oh man, you real impatient, or oh, you need to learn how to communicate with people better, or whatever it is. It exposes the gaps, the places where you really need the grace of God to come in and help you, where you really need to tap into therapy, where you really need to tap into those resources that are available to you. So again, thinking positive is great, but when you say that, just know that you're robbing someone of the full experience of unpacking all of that and becoming healthier. Because like in my example, you tell someone to think positive and they think positive so much they suppress the negative emotions instead of dealing with them. And if we have a society of people suppressing emotions and not dealing with it, we have a society of emotionally unintelligent individuals who make decisions based on emotion instead of unpacking the emotion and making wise decisions. So just be really careful what you should and tell people to do who are going through chronic illness. Just be really careful. Words have power. All right. My last one is simply something that I've heard a lot. I really have. And it's this idea of like, yeah, but you haven't tried everything. It's essentially telling people with chronic illnesses that they're not doing enough. And it may not be explicitly communicated, but it is often implicitly communicated through text messages of remedies, articles, ads, anything you think is applicable to that person's condition. Like that, like I said a couple myths back, we gotta stop it. if you're not willing to grasp the full experience of what someone's going through, or even hear them out just a little bit, do not recommend nothing. We have medical professionals. Okay. What is more effective is being a part of their support team if you can even handle that. But don't go trying to do stuff like that, because it's not effective, and it really implies like, hey, I don't think you're communicating with your medical professional, and you have 20 medications that you're working on and trying to get 4 different treatments going. So I'm going to recommend you put tartar sauce on your tongue. Yes, that is a recommendation I have gotten. Or I'm going to recommend you put essential oils behind your ears. No, we're not doing that. Okay? We're not doing that. We're not doing that. I expect better from people, to a fault. I expect better from people. I expect that if you're going to be in someone's life, you're going to invest in their life. And that a lot of that investment takes place by listening. And a lot of that investment takes place by lending your presence in that relationship. Because you can be present and not present. You can show up, but you can also not be all the way there. I've done that in school. I showed up in class and I had a migraine and I wasn't feeling good. I checked out. I'm gonna be completely honest. I don't know how I was taking notes, but I was daydreaming about laying back down when I got to the door. You can be present and not present. Let me see what these comments are saying. I know this may vary from person to person. How have you personally dealt with, or what would you say to someone who feels that their worth is based on what they're able to do? Yeah, thank you for that question, boss. This is something I'm still working on, and I say that because for a long time I've dealt with perfectionism, and the bulk of perfectionism is equating your productivity with your identity. So for a long time I was equating with how many A's I could get, uh how high my GPA was, or how many times I did XYZ with my worth, until I started, really grasping the concept of Christ giving me an identity already and me grasping onto that. But even now, I'm still learning, like, okay, if I'm bedbound or I can't do XYZ, that doesn't mean I'm any less of a person. That doesn't mean I'm any less intelligent. It just means I have to take care of my body in this way. And that is productive. Taking care of myself by resting, by eating, by drinking water, whatever it may be, taking care of myself, otherwise known as self-care, is productive and it is biblical. And even that is not equated to my identity. I'm going to check out these. Yep, I learned that from my dad. Yep. I know you were trying to spell depth. It's hard to spell from memory. Having someone with chronic pain in your life will definitely show you if you truly are a caring person or not. It definitely will, Tyler. And even before like I developed chronic migraine, I always had what shall I say? Empathy for people who go through different things medically, physically, in general, just because of what I went through growing up, having albinism and all of that. But I don't think that I would be the person today had I not had all of these challenges with chronic illness, being, visually impaired, having albinism. And for a while, I was in a place of, why me, God? But in actuality, I had to understand that all things work for the good of those who love the Lord and are called to his purpose. But I also understand that I'm not a mistake. Just because I got all these things going on with me, it just makes me more intentional. It just makes me persevere more. It makes me work harder. It makes me more determined to walk in what God has called me to. Let's see. Yes, I agree. Try to ask what they've tried and see if you can try and help. Yes, ask what they've tried already and don't recommend nothing else. But just see if you could help them by meeting their needs. Like, hey, like, I know you're in a lot of pain today, but you need laundry done. Cause I can go do your laundry. Or you need me to take the trash out? I'll come and take the trash out for you. You need a meal? What you want? You want Chick-fil-A? I got you. Doing simple things like that really communicates several things. It communicates that you care and that you're willing to put action behind that care. Because some people can care in the moment and be all emotional, like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that you're going through that. But then you hit them up 2 days later and like, man, I'm not feeling good. And they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. But they never put any action behind that. It's easy to send a text. And I'm mainly talking about people who live in the same vicinity. Like, it's easy to send a text. It takes more work and more intentionality to do something about the emotion behind you feeling whatever you feel for that person. Why would why the heck would I take medical advice from someone who never went to school for a day of their life? But exactly, but I don't know what it is. I think it might be social media. I think it might be just the culture in general. For some reason, we feel obligated to assert ourselves as experts on things we don't even know about. You read a Instagram post with 8 slides on it, and now you feel like you got a PhD in what I'm going through. It don't work like that. I got to see some certificates. I got to see some licenses. I got to see some diplomas. And I said diplomas with an S because it takes multiple for me to be convinced. I got to see your long history of treatment plans that you've given to other people. I got to see some receipts before you can give me medical advice. I don't know if you realize my name and I can remember the first time I saw you on Zoom. Try and guess. Ah, man, I'm trying to remember. You're gonna have to help me out with that. Honestly, put on the California white girl. Yeah. But yeah, exactly. Graduation pictures with the degree in hand. I need to see your professors, what they look like, how old they were. I need proof. Give me receipts before you come knocking at my door or hitting up my phone with links to home remedies and supplements. I'm sorry, just don't do that. So, guys, that is all of the 10 misconceptions I'm going to do for today. There's a lot of them. But I also want to highlight something real quick because I mentioned chronic illness and chronic illnesses, but there are a lot of specific chronic illnesses that, exist. And I kind of want to highlight them, just show you a list, so that you can be aware that it's not something that is in a vacuum or a quiet space. Chances are you know someone who is fighting as a chronic illness warrior and they just haven't told you. So, heart disease, stroke, lung cancer, you see depression, type 2 diabetes, arthritis, asthma, and there's a bunch more. There's lupus, there is what is it? Crohn's disease. There's a lot. I encourage you to go look it up because each one is specific, each one is different. I have 2 chronic illnesses in addition to my disability of being visually impaired. And they are hypermobility spectrum disorder and chronic migraine disorder. Hypermobility spectrum disorder is a connective tissue disorder where my bones, my joints move beyond the normal range of motion. It's also known as being double jointed. But with this condition, as a result of me being double jointed, I experience intense chronic pain that often leaves me bedbound for days, sometimes months. In addition to that, chronic migraine disorder is a neurological disease, or some people say condition, where my brain is super excitatory. So things like loud noises, bright lights, certain smells, the weather changes, the sunlight, pressures and weather changes, certain foods, a whole host of things can trigger a migraine attack for me. And I experience multiple migraine attacks, and my migraine attacks are unending 24/7, 7 days a week, meaning that they're intractable. So chronic illness has many faces, many names, but the goal of me doing this video is to show you that despite the many chronic illnesses and the many names, the different faces, these are all misconceptions that affect every last one of us and hurt individuals in their process of living with these conditions. And if I can help anybody better understand what it is like to go through these types of things, I want to be a conduit of reconciliation and help you understand. Because ultimately, I'm not here to bash you and tell you what you did wrong. I'm here to provide solutions so that people can build relationships that are more effective, Christ-like, more healing, more purposeful, and more based on service rather than assumption. So I want to thank every last one of y'all who have interacted with me in this comment section. I really enjoyed your presence and you spending this time with me. Come back, because next week I'm gonna be doing another episode, but I'm gonna have a guest with a special family. Special family is gonna be a special episode. I'm not gonna tell you their name yet. It's a surprise, but come back for that. And I would love to chat with you guys again in the comment section next week. Thank you for spending time with me. And without further ado, don't forget to live each day with the aim of becoming better and not bitter. God bless.